Alright guys, I'm going to go through my calls from the day, and I've kind of invited Zozo, Michael N, and any of the other moderators if they want to make any videos of any of their calls, put them on YouTube or whatever, and let me know, and I can share the link on the member page, because they'd be much better suited to go over their calls than I would, because they're different. Their entry reasons are usually different than mine, because we've all got our own styles, which is, in my opinion, a cool thing about the room. You get a variety of different styles from the moderators. All right, so having said that, so here's my calls. Loco gapped down. Now remember, Loco was on bounce watch anyway because it was already getting shape on the daily to the downside. And then when it gapped down, I was looking at it for a bounce play gap down setup. Look at that, 1 million shares in the first 5 minutes. So I watched it trade, and then it came back down a little bit, and I went ahead and called it on twos, which I'll switch to now. Now if you're new here, when I call something on twos, it means I'm using 2-minute candles. I'll have a lower high being put in. I'll zoom in a little bit. And so I'm looking to go long the first break of a previous 2-minute candles high. Now when I called it, you have to kind of imagine this one was forming at the time. In other words, the 2 minutes that this candle represents wasn't complete yet. And it was in the 2780s when I actually took a position, because it was looking strong. So sometimes you can do that. I would have killed it if it took out this candle's low. But the actual trigger was a break of 28, because you had the high after 4 minutes was 28.15, then you had a lower high of 28. So 28.01 becomes the trigger, and the stop goes below this candle, 27.62. And you can see what happened. There's the trigger, and it based for a while and then really got going and ended up going up to over 29. It went to 29.08. Let me switch to fives now. On that first run, came back, and one of our moderators, Frederick, was suggesting another nibble around 28 because it had support there from earlier, and that worked too. So, and I called it again at 28.01. You got to move to 29. I called it again when it looked like this at 28.55, and I think the stop was 28.35. So if you weren't still in it from the twos entry, and this was purely anticipating that this was coming up on CNBC. One of the commentators said, I think they were talking about Pete and Jerry, and it could have been John, so I apologize if I'm wrong, but I think it was Pete, saying, hey, we've got a stock that Pete was crazy about, which was their little segue into that it was going to be Loco, because Loco means crazy, as we all know. So they said Pete was crazy about it. Let's see how he feels about it now, because it was much higher, by the way, when Pete was crazy about it. But I actually was trading that day, and I remember him saying that they're just out on the West Coast. They've got the entire country to expand to. So this is a longer term story. And my thinking was he was going to say, yeah, it's much lower, but I bought more today. Or I really like it down here. Something. And that ended up being what he said, by the way. He did say they've got a lot of room for expansion, and he bought more today. So we got in at 28.55. The worst case stop was 20 cents below. And we got to move to almost a buck. It went up to 29.45. So that was two trades you could have had in Loco that were called in the room. And let's see, let's see what else. That didn't work. Urban, I called on reverse twos, URBN, because it was grinding up here and then started to kind of get shape change. And I thought, I bet you this had, and you had the whole number 31. I said, I bet this has shape change on twos. And this is what it looked like at the time. So grinding, and then you got a little bit of a push. The twos trigger, reverse twos I should say, would have been a break below 31. So 30.99, literally with a 31.08 stop. And it went down to 30.77. So, you know, I don't know, about a 20-cent move. I took a little profit there. When it came back up, I was back out. So I only made a smidgen on that thing. And it just based the rest of the day. So that was my trade in Urban. It wasn't much. Macy's, I did the same thing, reverse twos, and I had that line on the chart for a reason. So Macy's is gapped down a little bit and then grinding, and really gets shape change through this 63 line. And if you look on the daily, 63, and that's roughly, it actually went up to 63.10 in mid-August, but it had come a long way on an intraday basis to get to 63. So I just called it on a reverse twos. Simple as that. Once it got over that line, which became the first break of a previous twos low as a short, that's what we mean by reverse. 63.04, triggered right there, Worst case stop 63.16. From 63.04, it did get down to 62.70. Not much, but it's still nice little. We were green pretty much from the entry, and then it ended up going higher through the high of the day. So we're day traders. I take these when I find them. A lot of times you can get a nice trade. Sometimes the rest of the trade, if you scale out, will work all day and just keep going in your favor, and sometimes not. But once I start scaling out, it becomes a can't lose trade for me. In other words, I will not take a loss on a stock once that happens. MBLY, I mentioned on 5s down here, which was the low of the day. Right down here, the first break of a previous 5s high, which became 44.01 right there, and a worst case stop was 43.62. From 44.01, it went pretty quickly to 44.72 and ultimately went a little bit higher to 44.90. And since I have it in my notes too, I'm going to talk about Zozo's call here on UPL. He called this at 23.15 with a stop at 22.90. And there's the trigger. And from 23.15, this pretty quickly went up almost $1. So I'm hoping he'll make a video and give the exact reason, because I don't like doing that. I don't like guessing why he made the call. So, and I think he said something about making a video. So I'd prefer the other mods to kind of make videos if they want. Obviously, they don't have to. It's time consuming. But I at least wanted to highlight that. It was a really, really nice call by Zozo. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good night.